All right. Thank you all for your time and being patient. So we thank you for coming in this week. We're going to get right started in. I just had to get a few things together for our notes today. We're going to be talking more about how to use your trust EIN for real estate. We're going to show you how you're able to use that for real estate as well. Last week, we went over quantum banking and went over the banking system. And we'll try to get back into the banking system more in detail later on because the banking system can be quite complicated because of the way everybody feels of getting, which we say, access to capital, which we're going to learn how the way that you get access to capital through a trust is different than the way you have got access to capital in your entire life, and including myself. I had to sit down and think about this knowledge for at least about 5 to 6 months before I could even understand it. So it's not something that I explain that I think everybody will be able to get in one day. It may take you time to study and to read over this information over and over again. So we're going to stay right on topic of talking about real estate. That's including the place where you lay your head, where you rent, where you buy your house, or if you buy the house or you own it, or let's say you're in the process of buying the house, you have a mortgage. It all fits in every single category when you are able to utilize the trust. So I'll first introduce myself. My name is Wallace. I am one of the instructors here. You can call me Raak, or you can call me whichever form that you feel is best to call me in. I basically just help give my perspective on how it looks to run a trust and use a business at the same time. A lot of us haven't been able to have examples because we have a lot of people explain things, but we don't see the examples. So I want to be able to show examples of what I'm speaking of as I get into a lot of this knowledge, because sometimes it could be very difficult if you're not able to show pretty much results. We're going to say show like a paper, show a document, or anything that can show what you're talking about. So that's what I like to do. And I like to get into the information through, which we say, through showing on the screen. So I'll be able to go into hard questions if you all have any comments, questions, or shares. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to talk about the IRS today. So do not at any point, I guess, ask us of how to deal with the IRS. We're not able to talk about how to deal with taxes or bills today, but we're going to be mainly speaking about real estate because real estate seems to be the thing that we never learned in school as well. You never learned about real estate. You never learned about real estate at home either. So there's no place that we found that people actually understand real estate. First thing that pops up to most of us is we think of real estate, we think of a sign that says for sale. So that's why I had that picture on there to show us what it looks like when we think of for sale. Like when you think of that, the first thing you may think of is a realtor. So some of us may get into the understanding of real estate is the first person you go to is a realtor. So I'm going to show you the steps of how you're supposed to approach that today, but I have to give you all some background to it before I can even explain it, because real estate is something that, like I say, is not on the personal side. So the way the trust works, once you approach the real estate, the way I'm going to show you all today, it's going to be totally different than the way you'll ever approach it again. This absolutely works 100%. So if you all are practicing this process, it will go through. Um, I don't think that anyone has been able to get any bad results with this unless you're trying to run it for credit. So you don't have to run it for credit to get access to real estate. We're going to show you how to do this without running your name or your information for credit. So that's a very important part. So let me get to some definitions, and I want to pick your brain today and ask a few questions. I wanted to see if you all have knowledge of some of these documents. For instance, the first one is we're going to learn about that we'll say the IRS does expect you to know is a responsible party. So has anybody here ever heard of a responsible party? And what is a responsible party whenever you hear that, whenever they say a responsible party? You feel free to type it in the chat if you don't want to speak. If you have learned this definition before in our quizzes and our notes, then definitely point that out as well. So we got the question is, what is a responsible party? And you bear with me, I'm going to pull that up on the screen for you all in just a moment so you can see what a responsible party is. I may even pull it up from the IRS website. Let's see if we can do that. All right, so we got any comments or questions so far? Make sure you're able to pick your brain to know this because you're going to need to know this for real estate. If you don't know this question, then you're going to get bamboozled by the real estate brokers, the realtors, and the bank, which they're going to try to say that you need to use your personal credit. So our goal is to avoid this personal credit that everybody goes into of saying, hey, they're asking me for my social. Hey, they need to run my social in order for me to get this house, right? Or this, whatever it is. So we want to make sure everyone understands these definitions. When you get in there, you want to make sure you know what it is. All right, that's a good question. Somebody got a few comments in here. Somebody said person who signs the contract. That is correct. One of the answers. We had another person that said a person who's responsible. Great, perfect. That's that was the best answer I heard because I mean it's right there in the definition. It says responsible party. A lot of us don't want to be responsible. We're hiding, and I'm telling you, this is something that real estate is one of those things you have to know exactly what you're doing, or you can get in a lot of trouble, right? Because some people will play that they're not responsible and then they will act irresponsibly, right? They will act irresponsibly. So we're going to make sure that we totally define this first before I get into any topics. And I'm going to find it on the IRS website. It's it right here. So I got it. I'm going to pull it up on the screen for you all. All right. Here we go. And at any point, if you all want to type in more answers, feel free. And we'll go ahead and get to the answer real quick that we have from the IRS. Let's go straight to the IRS website and see what this says. All right, so responsible parties and nominees. Keep in mind, when you're not responsible, the city, the government, or other entities will find someone. They will usually find somebody to become responsible when they say that nobody knows who's the responsible party, right? So we're going to get into the definition, the way the government looks at it. The government looks at it as a business. So I wanted to show you firstly, the responsible people are never on the individual side. Even on the IRS website, you notice that they jump right into businesses and self-employed people. Okay, so they know for sure that if you all are on the individual side, then they don't feel like you're responsible. So I'm helping a lot of people that are fighting the agencies, the third party debt collectors, and the mortgagees and the mortgagers and stuff like that, right? Well, I'm explaining to you that they don't see that you are responsible because they see you as an individual. So anytime you're on the individual side, the IRS even tells you right here that they automatically don't see you as a responsible party. So let's jump right into what the definition says right here on the IRS. And it goes right into the businesses and the self-employed. And we'll get into all these layers because it goes right into what I want to talk about, how you're able to use just the EIN document that the IRS gave you, not the documents that you keep creating. Because you all keep creating documents, and I'm telling you, don't create stuff. Let the system create it. Because the system doesn't recognize your stuff. The system doesn't recognize stuff that we create. So we want to make sure we totally look at it from a computer perspective, right? So instantly the IRS told you, and I want to make sure I'm clearly showing you on the screen that this says that you're not able to be a responsible person, a responsible party, if you're still on the individual side. All right, so let's get right into it. It says a responsible party is someone who owns, right? You take ownership, like they say, take ownership in that problem that you created. They always tell us to own the problems, right? But they'll never tell you to own the good stuff. You know, people don't ever want you to own the good, positive things that you do. They want you to own the bad things, own all the bad things that you did. All right, we're gonna get into more legal definitions of the responsible parties of real estate. So we're getting right into real estate to explain this on the real estate side. A responsible party is someone who owns, controls, or exercises effective control over a business. Right here. So that's the first things first is you must be thinking and operating as a business. You can't be an individual if you're a responsible party. A nonprofit or other legal entity and directly or indirectly manages its funds and assets. There we go. So this is important. So that means you're good with the money, the funds, you're responsible with the money, you're responsible with the payments, you're actually making everything work and you're arranging things, you're making it happen. That's a responsible party. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty. It says when you apply for an employer identification number, you must name a qualified responsible party. Look at this right here. So the IRS, the government is telling you that you must make a name of a person to be qualified to be responsible. And that's for the business that we're going to be talking about in just a moment. When you apply, so that means you got to apply yourself. You have to apply yourself. They're not going to do it. The courthouse can't do it. The police can't do it. Who else can't do it for you? I mean, if you give them responsibility, now we're going to get into that. We're going to get into how they can do it if you begin to give them the responsibility. Here we go. So it says you must have name a qualified responsible party and submit their taxpayer identification number. Okay, so that goes back to that social that a lot of our people are trying to evade or avoid. And I'm gonna prove to you beyond reasonable doubt why you can't evade or avoid the social. Because there's no way you can grab this EIN if you don't have the social. And some would say, well, I can grab an EIN. I don't need the social. I'm going to grab an EIN that's foreign. I'm going to grab the foreign EIN. Well, this isn't speaking of this right here. This isn't speaking of someone who's going to be the responsible party over these assets that we're going to be talking about in a few. Responsible parties for your entity. The responsible party depends on your entity type. It's usually a corporation. So they always start off everybody with the corporation side. Corporations. So that means your LLCs, your S corps, your C corps, all of your corporations. The principal officer, the CEO. Next is your partnerships, general partnerships. General partner within the corporation, a person who's working in the corporation, working with the corporation, they're partners. Next is your tax exempt. So that's why we don't use tax exempt, because we know tax exempt organization means nonprofits, 501c3s, or anything that they qualify as a tax exempt organization. Because you can have a 508 or 50, a whole bunch of, not 508, I'm sorry, 510s and 512s. They have all types of 501s out there. Principal officer. So that's that. And the one that we're focused on is the trust. There we go. So this goes right into the trust. So if you all have a trust, it's trying to scroll me up. If you all have a trust, then the grantor or the owner or trustor is the responsible party. That's getting right into our revocable trust. We know that the revocable trust says that you're the grantor as soon as you have access to this revocable trust. Next is the estate. The estate is an executor, an administrator, a personal representative, or other fiduciary. So that's going into specifically the estate. So the other fiduciary is most of the time what's going on with a lot of our stuff is an other fiduciary that's managing that for us. What is that? Why did they go down here? Yeah, the other fiduciary is usually managing all of our stuff right here when we get into the estate. So that's part of the real estate that they don't tell you. See, they want you all to be confused on real estate, right? We're real estate. So what is the real estate? Well, the real estate is really the one who is the responsible party over all of the property or the assets that are in the name, right? So the estate is a very powerful position right here because you got executors, administrators, personal representatives. You can personally find people to represent you if you don't want to be responsible. You can find other fiduciaries if you want to give it over to the bank. because that's what the bank is going to do. They're going to file a form 56F, right? So they're going to do the 56F because they're banks, they're financial institutions. So that's where you're getting into these. And I'm going to get into the details of this because I know some of us can't read through this the way that I'm reading through it because I'm seeing a lot right here. The courthouse, right here, executor. This is the courthouse. Every time you give over executive powers to the estate, the courthouse has power. That's the judges, right? The executors, the judges, the administrators. Here's your administrators. There's your people that work at the county tax, the city tax people, the administrators, the estate. So this is all real estate right here. All of this. Because you can't tell me that you have a house, you have all this stuff, and all these people are not dealing with decisions in the process of that house or that location, right? Or that land. Well, we're not talking about land today. We're just going to talk specifically about real estate. All right. So the estate is part of the real estate. And that's where that's where you're supposed to think of the responsible party. Next is the government entity. Look at that. A government entity can be a responsible party. An agency or representative who can legally bind the entity. It says you aren't a responsible party if you can fund an entity or are entitled to its property, but aren't authorized to control, manage, or direct it. There you go. So that means if you can't control, manage, or direct the entity, you're not the responsible party. This is going to go right into why you all are still using the Social Security card exclusively, but you can't use the Social Security card exclusively because you can't control, manage, or direct the funds that are in there. No matter how many affidavits you write, they will never ever liquidate every single dollar out of that Social Security account. They can't because you can fund it right here. You're not the responsible party if you can fund an entity or are entitled to its property. Look at that. They're so specific. But you aren't authorized to control, manage, or direct it. An example, a minor child beneficiary. Wow. Look at that. They gave us a good example. I didn't even know they were going to say that. A minor child beneficiary. So we're still the minor if we stay in the Social Security card, which we're going to get into details to explain why the Social Security card isn't what you want to buy real estate with. So we're going to show why when everyone uses the Social Security card. Let me go to this to show an example on the screen so we can know exactly what we're talking about. Some of us, we do it so fast, we don't know that we're doing this. Let's be very specific, right? And this goes as far as our grandmothers, our granddads, everybody we know. Everybody we know, even if you had a good job, it doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. So that we don't fully control it if we put it all in the Social Security card. So I'm gonna get right here into this image to show you what I'm speaking of right here. Here we go. This is what we're speaking of. This same card that was around us while we was little babies, right? Remember, this is our minor card. This is the beneficiary minor card. Does this make sense to anyone? Does this make sense? Y'all share with me. Let me know. I just want to make sure we're picking the brain so we totally understand where this is coming from. This is the beneficiary minor card right here. All right. So when you buy houses with this card, when you apply for credit, okay, when you apply for credit with this card, you are not maintaining, according to what the IRS says right here, full control. The IRS says you aren't a responsible party because you don't fully control, manage, or direct it. Any questions or thoughts to this part? Because we want to make sure the responsible party is someone important because this is a very important person right here. As we get into understanding how the IRS won't be able to come in and take what you have The government won't be able to come and take what you have. The lawyers or all these other parties that we keep hearing people say, hey, I got to worry about this party, that party. Well, here we are. These are your parties right here. All these parties right here, these responsible parties that are all up in your entity. And our goal is to get them out. Your goal is to get all these responsible parties out of your entity by simply moving out of that situation, which we're going to go right into we're going to say the trust EIN. We're going to get right into the EIN, the trust EIN. Let me see if I can find that example for you all to see how a trust EIN looks. Okay, so I got some good examples of the trust EIN that I have been able to find that has worked out effectively for me. And it should have worked out effectively for everyone, because if all you have to use is the trust EIN, right? Then that means you've had the answer the entire time. You have to use that. You can't just have it, but you're not using it. So this is important for us to always remember what it says on those documents, because I want to be redundant when I read through this information sometimes, because it can sometimes we can probably forget. I know I forgot a few times. All right, so let's go right to, I'm going to show you all an example of my document of the trust EIN. For example, I'm going to use the revocable trust. Let me see if I can use the revocable trust EIN. Here we go, right here, revocable trust. Let me share my screen for you all to see that in just a moment. And if you all have comments, questions, feel free to type it in the chat. I didn't check the YouTube yet, so I'll check YouTube as well at any point that you all have comments in YouTube. Okay, as you can see, I have everything organized in a digital file. I want you all to be able to do the same thing eventually. And this is just a short amount of documents. I wasn't able to fully put everything here, but I was able to put most of the important ones. But for instance, my trust EIN, I'm going to show you the revocable trust, and I'll show you the estate EIN next. We'll get into both of them. So this is what I'm saying of the trust EIN. This is exactly what I'm speaking of. So when you see the trust EIN, you want to use this document right here that's given to you by the Treasury. You want to make sure it's a revocable. The reason why we say it has to be revocable first is because you're capturing the social. And we're going to be very specific and say everything that you saw on that social security card. You want to be able to move everything out of that social card, or the assets. I'm going to say all the funds, all the assets, all the money, all the things that you've been funding and doing. You don't want to continually put that into the social. You want to put it in the EIN. What does that mean? Well, when I say that, you want to use that EIN number. So don't use your social, use the EIN number right here as you begin to identify yourself. Not only will you use the EIN number, you're going to also use the name that's on the EIN. So you have to create a new name for yourself. I always tell people, don't put the same name. And I understand we have people that have done it. It's no problem. Eventually, you will need to update your name, because if you're going to use the same name, it's going to mistake you of being a minor. That's all I can tell you, because if you're having problems because you're using the same name, then the only thing I can say is that you're probably being mistaken as a minor, because we just went over this. They just told you on the IRS website, they say that um, if you aren't able to fully show that you're authorized to do whatever you want with that social security card, then more than likely you are a minor child beneficiary, right? Until you have proven yourself to come out of that minor child status, right? We're going to say that's a status now, because we are still in a minor child status, because we never were told once we turned 18, right? Nobody told us this. I know this for a fact, because I wasn't told this either. I was about close to 30 when I found out how to do this. But if my mom and dad had told me when I turned 18 that I needed to create a revocable living trust. I also needed to have a power of attorney. I also needed to understand how to get a business account, right? Or a business. Then I would become no longer a minor. And just to prove this, I want to show you as I go. I know I go into multiple tangents, but what I'm saying is something called the UT, since some of us may need more proof of what I'm saying, and you all can use this as a study. That's why I say take careful note as I'm saying things, or if you see the screen, take careful note. This is the law. So this is why they treat you this way at the courthouse. This is why the police treat you this way. This is why the government treats you this way. All right. The government looks at you like you're a minor. All right. So don't feel offended. Don't feel offended. Right. It's just what it is. If we no longer want to be a minor, then we can come out of this minor status. We can stop focusing on using our social security card and being upset at these people all day, every day because they didn't approve my social security credit card. They didn't approve me because I applied for credit or because I needed them to get stuff off my name. All these things that we're focusing on, they see us as minors. Matter of fact, they see us as little babies. Let's just get there. You want to go all the way down to what they really see you as? They see you like a little baby. And I'm saying this to grown folks. I'm not saying this. I'm saying this to myself too because I was acting like a little baby as far as they were concerned until I updated my stuff in their system. So let's get right into what the law tells you. It says Uniform Transfers to Minors Act, a law that allows a minor to receive gifts without the aid of a guardian or trustee. That's right. So the government is playing your guardian and the government is playing your trustee. As I explained to you that the treasurer and the secretary of treasury, they're playing your trustee over your money, as well as the guardian is the government, such as the executive office, the police, the county playing guardian over you because they get the guardianship too. So all I'm saying to you is this is how it looks in their system, but we have to begin to come out of the 18-year-old time frame that we had never complete. Just read a little bit of the UTMA. It says the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act is a law that allows minors to receive gifts such as cash, real estate, royalties, patents, or fine art without the need for a formal trust. Look at that. So they created all that stuff in that social card trust for you because you didn't need the formal trust because they had one for you when you was a baby. Instead, a UTMA account is created with a donor or appointed custodian managing the assets on the minor's behalf until they reach the what? The age of majority, set by state law. These accounts can also offer tax advantages since the minor's unearned income is typically taxed at a lower rate up to certain limits. So as you can see, let me go right to the age gap. They tell you that you are no longer supposed to be a minor and how we were supposed to claim all of our stuff from the government. You know, like everybody say, I'm claiming all my money back from the treasury and all. Well, look, they said, why didn't you start doing that when you turned 18? That's how the government looks at it. Well, why didn't you start this when you were 18? Let's read right here. It says the UTMA is similar to the original versions of the Uniform Gifts to Minors Act, UGMA. It allows minors to receive gifts and avoid tax consequences until they become of legal age in the state in which they live, typically 18 or 21, right? So some states is 21. So I thought it was 18, but right here in Florida, it is 18. But some states, it is 21. Years of age. The UTMA incorporates the language of the UGMA and so on. So I wanted to get into that to kind of show you where all this is coming from, because sometimes as we walk through this of why it's difficult to use that same name that you had on a social security card, it's because of all this stuff that they did here on the IRS. You know, when they had to create that card for you, when they had to create that number. So that gets us into our first introduction of what we're going to be talking about today is how you become the responsible party. How are you going to be the one that is responsible, and how you're no longer going to let the government be responsible for everything that you got? So I'll open up for comments, questions, and shares at this point, and I'm going to give us a small break in between before I go into our next segment of how you're going to be able to use that EIN. How do I use this EIN to purchase property? How do I use this EIN to get credit? What do I do? Do I go to the bank? Does the bank run my social? Does the bank do this, and so on? So we're going to learn these answers to these questions, because some of this can be confusing at times if we don't know the correct way to start. So I yield for now, and I'll open up for comments and questions and shares. It should allow everyone to. Oh, okay, I see what was going on. You all were not allowed to unmute yourself. That's why nobody was able to talk. All right, so you should be able to unmute yourself if you all have any comments or questions or thoughts so far. And I yield.
Brother Wallace.
Greetings. Go ahead. We got you on the mic for now.
Greetings. Uh, for the estate, you mentioned there should be you have to get an EIN number for the estate, just like the trust. Correct.
Well, not yet. I'm gonna say, because you got to be living first, right?
Right. Living
And
trust I have. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but you got to prove that you're living, and you need to operate through the living first, right?
Right.
So that you can prove you're living, and then you can get to that estate EIN, because they ask some hard questions for some people. They say, like I say, somebody's going to run across it and they're going to say the date of the death, right? It's going to say the date of death, right?
Oh, okay.
Are you
Okay.
familiar? Are you familiar with that part? Have you ever ran into that? And what's your thoughts to that?
Well, I mean, it's almost like, you know, someone passed, but when did you stop living? I mean, it's like the question asked, okay, so you're no longer alive, or they want a date that you're no longer what part of the living trust, or I mean, I think I've seen that before, but not exactly understanding exactly. This is almost like a family member that had already died or something, when you're trying to take over their estate.
Well, I mean, usually, like we just went over the screen, there's going to be a new responsible party that's going to be taking over that estate, right? So they're going to go ahead and grab the EIN.
Oh, okay.
You see? Because
Like,
it's now at the courthouse, is it not?
mm-hmm. Probate,
Okay,
probate. So they'll be taking over your estate.
correct. So if you are living, you are able to do things while you're living.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you didn't do it, then someone else is going to do it. That's what usually
Mm.
happens while the courthouse takes over. Like let's say a grandmama or a granddaddy's estate. You know, why has the courthouse got grandma or granddaddy estate on the board, mama? What's going on? These are the questions the children are asked. Like, what's going on? Why is grandma or granddaddy estate all on the bulletin board?
Yeah. It should go to their inheritance. What happened to the offspring, the inheritance?
Correct. So the grandchildren don't get the inheritance because of, I just gave you all those characters that are getting paid, right?
Yep.
How many people getting paid? You got the executors, you got the administrators, you got the personal representatives, and you also got some fiduciaries, right?
Yep. Attorneys and all them. Mm-hmm.
They're not gonna say they're attorneys. They're gonna say they're personal representatives.
I know. Correct.
Yeah, so you asked a really good question. I mean, I want to make sure that we're picking our brains to see how important this is, how very important, and how you can change everything when we think of real estate, you know,
But
because we think of real estate, what do you think of? I ask you that question. When you think of real estate, what are you thinking of?
well, a lot of us think of just the houses and property and the ones with the for sale sign, like you said, for the house, property, when they're not realizing you're the real person. So you're the real estate, but they didn't teach us this in school. Only thing we know about when we were younger was houses and property, apartment buildings and whatnot. Yep.
Absolutely. I hope I answered your question. So yes, I mean, short answer is it's a very, very difficult thing to do if you can't prove to yourself that you're living. That's
Right.
what I'll say.
Yeah, I understand. No.
All right. So any other thoughts? Anybody else had any thoughts about as we get into real estate? Is that any comments on this? Because this is new to all of us, even myself. I had never ventured into understanding this until recently. So none of us have all the answers yet. We're just learning, we're searching, we're studying. But that was a good point you brought out. The first things first, I think of, I ain't gonna lie, I was thinking about that sign right here that we see on the screen. I was thinking about, hey man, you talking about real estate, right? Anybody else? So what did you think of when you thought of real estate? Any other visual effects that we have when we think of real estate? All right, so let's venture into this for a second. So I like to say one of the times that we're not saying that to get rid of these signs or anything. Okay, so this is good. There's nothing wrong with the sign. It's our perspective. Usually we'll see somebody that's called a realtor. I'm going to actually get more detail for you all. A realtor, like you see a person who's selling the estate. Let me see if I can find a realtor. And this is not to knock anybody as a realtor, so please don't be offended if you're a realtor or if you are on these calls or you're listening to me. I'm just basically giving examples of what we've been taught, okay? This is what we're used to right here. Is this not what we're used to right here? Anybody have any thoughts to this of what we're usually used to with the purchasing of a house? Right here, real estate agent. So look at real estate agent versus a broker versus a realtor. Look at that. There's three levels to it. So they're not even the same people. How many of us thought they were all the same? The real estate agent's the same person. And this lady right here, she's breaking it down. She's saying the real estate agent versus the broker versus the realtor and the keys to the house right here. So we're here to venture. We're here to pick our brain. Let's say even if I went to talk to this lady right here, how will I do this? How do I talk to her? Anybody have any answers to this? Because some of us may have to deal with this and feeling like, hey, Brother Wallace, I heard you tell me, stop using my social, man. Just don't use the social, stop using my name. But what do I do? What do I do now? So what do I do to actually talk to her now? Because she's gonna ask me for the social. How do I answer her? Because she's gonna say, hey, what's your social? What's your social security number? Anybody have any shots at this? What would you do if you were asked that question and you're now in this same position of talking to the real estate agent, the broker, or the realtor?
I would say that I was just the responsible party. Um I can't mix my assets with the trust assets.
That sounds convincing. I mean, as long as she's convinced, that sounds good. So you mentioned the word responsible party. I like that. That's a good direct answer I can find somewhere if I looked it up. Yes, I think she'll accept that possibly. Anybody else got a shot at it? Well, what else? What would you say if you were asked for the social security number? Let's say she asked, well, what's your social security number? We just want to run it real quick. Don't worry about it. It's just a soft pull. We're not going to really mess up your credit. What would you say? What would you do to this question? Come on, you all. Or is somebody okay? Somebody typed in the chat right here. Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so you're getting some clarity to the question. I like that. So the clarity to the question would be, is this a business loan or commercial loan? Okay, that's a good question. So if you know it's a business loan, then it's gonna be approached a totally different way. That is a good point. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that out, because the first thing I would ask her is, hey, is this something I can use for a business to purchase the property, right? Right? Can I use the business to purchase the property? And then she has to answer that question for me. Anybody have any thoughts to this so far? Yeah, go ahead, brother Maduti.
Oh, what if you let her know that because this is a business, that you're a trustee, that you have a trust, that you're a trustee of your trust or a beneficiary.
I mean, that's a good question. That's a good one too. You said, "Look, I have a trust. I'm a trustee of a trust. Can the trust purchase the property?"
Right.
All right, we got another comment too. We got, so that's a good one. That's a good one too. So somebody says, "I'm operating under my trust. I do not use my personal social anymore." That's a good one. Richard Brown said that he is operating under his trust. I don't use my personal social anymore. That's what he said. He would say to her. So that's a good response as well. I just want to hear everybody's response if you're asked for the social. This is the most difficult part, we'll say, with a lot of things that goes on Monday through Friday, right? You're gonna get down, you're gonna sit down with these people, they got the keys in their hand, they ready to give you, like she got it right there, right? It's a good picture. Found a good one. The keys to the house is right there. And she still comes with this last minute question at the end of the day and says, hey, are you sure you just don't want to run the social real quick? Just fill out this social application. What would you say? Anybody have any thoughts? What would you give her instead of the social? I'll say as a more comfortable response. Anybody want to give a comfortable answer of what you would give her instead of you giving her the social? All right, going once, going twice. All right, we got somebody answer at 6:52. He says a copy of the EIN from the IRS. I'm brokering the deals. Okay.
The
Hey,
EIN number might not just well, that's the same answer.
wait, say it again. What you say, brother? I didn't hear what you said.
The EIN number, but I guess that's the same
Yeah,
number saying copy of the EIN.
yeah, the EIN number. But remember, I
Mm.
guess now you may feel uncomfortable. You may want to just give her some document or something, right? So we got two answers
Mm.
so far that seem to be the correct answer. Yeah, so I think you're correct too from saying the EIN, and somebody else as well said the IRS form. Somebody else said the EIN of the IRS. That's correct. All right, so that's the answer. I just showed you all the answer right before I showed this screen. Remember? Remember I showed you my EIN. So this is the answer right here. This is the all right.
Mhm.
This is the answer. Like, so you're not gonna give them the social no matter what. You're gonna be answered the questions, but just put not applicable. Put a line through the answer, okay? Just to help you when you fill out applications, you all. Because this is one of your most important parts of making sure you're able to apply the trust for the real estate. So it's just testing everybody. Just want to hear everybody how you're answering these questions. This is something I had to do as well. somebody may ask Brother Wallace, but what that works for the house, right? What about renting the house? What about if I want to rent? If it's a lease agreement with my landlord, how would that work? Anybody got any thoughts to that? How would you do this if this was the landlord? You had to pay the lease, and you had to pay the bills for the place you stand.
Is it? I don't remember one of the tax forms, but is it communicating with the landlord and letting them know where they'll be receiving their payment from or their funds from, and go ahead and fill out the proper documents so that they can send your treasury check.
Oh no, this isn't a treasury check yet. This is just you. You know, this is just you creating a connection with your real estate. We got a few answers in here, so I mean, I think you were saying a little bit of the answer. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by what you're giving them again? What exactly are you giving them?
Giving them the documents that allow them to see that you're not the words. I don't have the words exactly, but allowing them to see that you're not in the same category like everybody else. You're in a different. You're in the sole proprietor
Right,
side
right. That's a
on the
good. That's a
business
good. That's a
side.
good answer. That's a good answer. I
So,
would
Brother
say,
Wallace,
yeah. Go
um,
go ahead.
what about the 1099B? If you're going to be paying them
That's what I was talking.
the 1099B barter, because they want to know how they're going to be getting paid, the
Well,
landlord.
well, I got we. That's the thing. You can't really say that yet because they don't know nothing about no 1099B, so they're confused. What are you talking about,
Well,
right? So
if you-
you got to start somewhere with um. How would you even explain you have a trust if you haven't said that? You know.
then can't you tell them like really because it is an IRS form and the trust, the number, the EIN number, you got that from the IRS to set up that business, and you're a businessman or woman.
Look, you're talking to a regular
Well,
landlord,
well,
right? You got to think of it like this.
yeah,
You're talking to your
yeah,
landlord.
right.
How do you do that? Like you got to convince your landlord that what you're doing makes sense. Okay, this is how we got to get people to see this. So let's look at a regular lease agreement.
Okay.
You still got to give them something. What are you going to give them? We got a lot of answers. We got some good answers. I'm not saying these answers are wrong. As people have typed them in the chat, we're seeing some good answers. We're seeing
But
one
you
of
know
them I
what?
actually
You
go
know
ahead.
what, Brother Wallace? I know I was thinking about pay your, because on the 1099 says you pay your, so you're going to just say, you're going to pay them like you've been paying them. I mean, like anybody pay, but uh, you either have to do it that way. I mean, you're still going to pay them because they want the Federal Reserve notes still, but you still being a payer. Can you look at it that way? And you're going to get your money back, but they want to know because a lot of them don't know this. They just want to know how they're going to get paid. And you can say, I'm going to just pay, monthly or what, like you're supposed to.
Well, if you explaining that to him, he's probably thinking you may not pay, right? So I'm just saying, don't think about it too much, right? Somebody gave a great answer by saying earlier. I think at the last point, we got a lot of good answers, but let me go to the first good answers that we had. Is somebody just said, just give them the EIN again, right? You know what? Here you go, man. I don't know what I just learned about all this. So the best safe thing would be just to give them the EIN. Somebody would say, hey, just give them the EIN. That's a good answer. So we're not going to say that's the wrong answer. So that's it. That's the right answer. The
Instead of the
next,
say, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
the next right answer that we had is the W-9. Somebody put in the answers down here. Somebody said the W-9. That's another
Hmm.
good right answer. That's right, the W-9, because the W-9 explains and goes right into what you're saying, Madutia. I didn't want to go too far until you had said that, but I didn't hear you say that one yet. And you had just asked me about this about a week ago, right?
The W-9, yeah, I did.
There you go. So that will possibly get you access to the 1099 B nets, because the W-9 does explain in there on the bottom, it does go into the 1099s,
Right.
right? So it's like the W-9 does bring you into the business world with the landlord if you all begin to communicate with that residential lease agreement that way. So that's for those who are new to the trust realm and you're actually trying to use this to work with your lease agreement. It does work with your landlord, right? So for
Mm.
those who don't know, it can work with your landlord.
But what if they say, well, what is this? Because, you know, some landlords, they don't, if they don't know, if they say, well, I ain't never seen this tax form before. I mean, um, how would you explain that? I mean, you could read it, you could read what it says, but if you give it to a landlord who say, well, I ain't never heard of this or did this before, and what is this?
That's true. And I could say these are the whys, right? Um, and it's new because you got to be able to answer those questions. Now, the best answer that I got, just to kind of keep the landlord out the business and asking too many questions and things like this, all those answers were great, right? The EIN document, like you just said, Manutia, somebody could possibly still ask more questions. I don't know what this is. I don't understand this IRS document, right? So we got one good answer that we got from 100 eyes. He gave an answer right here, as he said, go ahead and fill out the lease agreement, add the trust to the lease with the EIN. That
Mm-hmm.
was one of the best answers, because now you're looking at this residential lease agreement, you're either updating information on it or you're filling it out as if it's the trust filling it out. So that gets right into the answer for the lease agreement. So now the trust is actually filling out the lease agreement. So you got the parties, as we see, the landlord is still there, but then you got to put the trust name here along with your name. So some people say, well, the landlord wants my name on the lease agreement. So we got answers to that too, to say, hey, you still put your name on the lease agreement, but also have your trust name on the lease agreement with it. Because who says your trust can't be a tenant? It says tenant names. It didn't say tenant name. So some of us would still say, hey, I couldn't use this trust, but I'm showing you that it does work. So that was the best answer. You got Brother 100 Eyes. Shout out to Brother 100 Eyes, gave you all more of a more detailed layer to the residential lease agreement. So any questions or thoughts to the residential lease agreement, as well as the house, right? So now you're still talking to the lady. You're about to buy the house, but let's say you already got a house, or you're gonna pay cash. We got some good questions on the YouTube. Somebody said, what if I have cash up front? What if I got the money? Right, we'll get into that answer too. But before we can get to all these answers, let's go right into a little bit of the meat of our discussion today. And I wanted to get us not too far from some of the comments or the questions, but let's get right into the trust document, right? So I went right into the questions right online with the AI co-pilot that we have with Bing. And I wanted to ask the questions just to kind of give us more details of what happens with the revocable living trust. So I asked the question, can I purchase property into a revocable living trust name instead? And the AI told me, yes, you can purchase property into a revocable living trust name instead of your legal name. This is a common practice in estate planning and can offer several benefits, including asset protection, probate avoidance, and easier management of the property. Here are some key points to consider. All right, so these are the key points I wanted to consider this for us to look into the detail why I say you need to remove your name out of the same name they gave you in the minor name, right? So that goes back to my social security card example that they're just remembering you as, right? We're gonna go right back to their memory in the system because you know the computer has memory as well. So even if you use the same name on the social card, this still allows them to try to mirror or match you with what they created. We're going to go to how the court system does this in a way. Sometimes they will create a fictitious image, right, and seek to match you with it, right? So this is another layer why we try to get you out of the usage of the social security card to buy the property, which goes right back to our control, right? So you lose control once you put it in the social security card name. So that goes right back to why I answered this question, the privacy here. It says your name, yeah, right here. So be very detailed. Your name will not appear in public records, providing a layer of privacy for the property. All right. So we see this when you get into I'll get into more things later for real estate, but we do this in our trust courses. We talk about how you're going to move it out of the property appraiser website, as well as the county assessor. Some of your states have county assessors. Some of us have the property appraiser. So you don't want your name to appear in their systems. You will want it to appear under the name of the revocable living trust. The asset protections, creditors. That's right. So they tell you the revocable trust doesn't stop you from creditors, but it does in a way. It is a shield against creditors. We'll say this it's your first line of defense, actually, is the revocable living trust, because you need other trusts after you get your revocable living trust established anyway. So you will be creating more trust after you do this as well. So asset protection means creditors and potential creditors will likely not see the property as an asset, which can protect your assets right here. So because now they can't see you, you're invisible. So the creditors, you're protected from the creditors as long as you remain invisible. But if you make yourself visible to the creditors, they now are going to come back after you. They're going to look for more ways to get into your treasure. They're going to look for ways to break through and steal through the name. They love using the name. That's why they say the creditors, they come after your name. Probate avoidance, because you're going to avoid probate. Probate is court. So if some of us don't know what probate means the courthouse. So we want to get all of our property to avoid the courthouse. We want auntie property to avoid the courthouse. We want our uncle's property to avoid the courthouse. We want our mom, our dad's properties to avoid the courthouse. This is what this is about, probate. The property will not go through the probate process upon your death. Right here, it goes back to the estate planning that we talked about earlier, that we don't want that to happen where it goes through that part. Simplifying the transfer to your beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are the grandchildren, the children's children, and generational wealth. That's what they talk about. This is all they're saying in one simple word. Generational wealth building is simplifying the transfer to your beneficiaries. That one line right here. All right. Mortgage. There we go. So they tell you, hey, you can't do anything with that mortgage, man. Yes, you can. Once you have a trust, you can deal with the mortgage easier. It says it right here. Most lenders will allow you to purchase the property in the name of a trust as long as you personally guarantee the loan. There we go. So that means if you want to get a mortgage, you have to personally guarantee. It's nothing wrong with what you did, but you needed to move it over into the name of the trust. Even the mortgage needs to be moved into the name of the trust, which we go through stringent details of how you're able to do that by calling them, emailing them, or mailing them, and they will do it within a matter of maybe 5 to 10 business days. All right. So for those who haven't done that part, that is a layer of a part that you have to do as well. You have tax benefits. You can continue to claim tax benefits such as the homestead exemption and exclude capital gains from the sale of primary residence. So that's what I did. I did go to further details of the homestead. I wanted to read more into that for those who don't know what that is. So let's get right into homestead exemption, which means that you're right to use the property tax-free or non-taxable. We're going to say non-taxable because we don't like to use the word tax exempt, because you all are thinking that you have to get a 501c3 or a tax exempt nonprofit organization. That's not what it is. It's just your revocable living trust has a homestead exemption clause within it, meaning that if all the property is put into the name of the revocable living trust, it instantly is qualified for homestead exemption. So I'll give you all just an example in Florida, what the revocable trust does for your property if you are in Florida. A revocable living trust can be used to retain the homestead exemption for a property. The key to this is ensuring that the trust is properly drafted to include the settler's right to use and occupy the property for life. This means the trust must clearly state that the settler has the right to use and occupy the property for life and assign the obligation to pay property taxes and maintain the property. If the trust does not include these rights, the homeowner may lose both the tax exemption and creditor protection. It is crucial to consult with an attorney familiar with trust drafting and Florida homestead laws to ensure the trust is structured correctly to preserve the homeowner's right. There you go. So that goes right into when you move that home into the trust. You want to be able to make sure that homestead exemption is there in the listing of the revocable trust, which most revocable trusts should have this, right? This is a basic detail, but we're showing once you move the home into the trust, this is one of the protections that you get. You're able to occupy the property for life. Like it goes from where we say the property is with the children, with the grandchildren. You say, hey, I have a revocable living trust, but I want all my grandchildren to always have access to land, right? To all my land. So you put all the land in the name of the trust, and then instantly everybody has that you name in that give that right to use and occupy. They call them settlers. So settlers, trustees, as well as beneficiaries, these are things that are maintained through this homestead exemption. So very important clause for those who are understanding, who already have your houses, if you already own your homes, or if you're going to purchase something in cash. This is one of your situations. So let's get to the answer to, let's say you were to purchase something in cash, right? If you were to do that, you would then create something called, and let me go to that real quick to help answer that question to a maybe direct question answer. You would create something called a deed of trust. Now, in some states, they don't have deed of trust. So what I do, they may say they want you to put a mortgage, right? So they're going to say deed of trust or mortgage. So you have to create that, and you also need to create something called a purchase agreement. So you create both of those and you issue that to the seller or whoever it is that you're going to buy the property from, or you receive the bill from them. Most of the time you want to get a offer, right? So I think what they call a letter of intent, that's what you would do if you really want to do it the correct way, like a real estate person does it, like a private broker. You would do something called a letter of intent, and that would include your offer, your buy, all those things, and then they were supposed to just send you the bill. You pay the bill, and then you're supposed to close on the property within 21 to 30 days. I think sometimes it could be 21 days, 28 days if you're fast. So that answers that just in words, but I want to see if I can find a deed of trust or mortgage to show what you'll be writing up for yourself, as the deed of trust includes the trustor, the lender, the beneficiary. So let's get into that right here for a moment to show you these parties that you have in a trust for a mortgage, because you're supposed to be the one writing the mortgage. Just for those who didn't know, if you were the one placing this into the trust, because it's a business now. You should know all of the parties and what you're doing. So it says the deed of trust involves three parties: the borrower, the trustor, the lender, the beneficiary, and the neutral third party, the trustee, who holds the legal title to the property until the loan is repaid. So they'll be holding that loan just for that moment because they have the title in their hand. And then once they sign you over that warranty deed or they sign you over the quick claim deed, let's say if it's a private owner, then you have true title to that property. That's what they call that title. Then once you get this title, you're going to create your own. No, you can't get the title first. You have to get the deed of trust. You create that deed of trust with them. Then the title is transferred over to you through the deed of trust. Once you get your title, then you have to go into the courthouse to file that on the courthouse record. So it's a long, extended process, but they give you everything if you go online and you understand how to create that. And the other part that we were going to talk about is how you're going to do something called a sales agreement. And I'm going to break down how the sales agreement is the first thing that you're supposed to get from whoever you're going to buy your property from. And you want to get everything in full. You don't want to say, hey, I'm going to just make a mortgage payment to the bank, because of most of us going to the bank first, we don't go to the bank first. You go straight to the owner, and then you get the information from the owners, from the salespeople. And then once you get all that information, you take them to your bank, which is your business bank account. Let me get into this answer right here as well, because we got a lot of answers we'll get back to as we go through each and every one of them. If you had the money to purchase the house, but what if you didn't have the money to purchase the house, which we don't want you to use your money to purchase the house, right? We want you to use real estate credit. Now, I like to use AI to answer questions whenever I'm showing the screen, because the AI does kind of give you a possibility if something can work, right? Then I look more into it. So I asked this question: can I use my EIN to apply for real estate credit? And when I asked this question right here, it gave me this. It says, when buying a house. So I didn't even ask them about buying a house, but this is what they said. It says, when buying a house with an EIN number, you must use the EIN as the taxpayer identification number on the loan. Wow, look at this. So it's very detailed that you must use the EIN number when you get the loan, even from the bank, that we're going to talk about a little bit later in my next call, because I won't be able to get to the bank this call because we're explaining how you're explaining your real estate before you even get to the bank. So it tells you that the EIN has to be attached to the loan. It can't be your social. So for some of us who already have the social attached to the loan, this shows that you can take that out of the social eventually if you are able to transfer it. Maybe transfer the loan that's in the social to the EIN, possibly. I don't know if that works. But if you started off the way that this works, you would start off with the EIN first, and the EIN will then buy the house. To the not theoretically, actually, we're going to say actually the house will be bought by the EIN, right? And this is the taxpayer. That's the taxpayer's number that's on the loan application. As we said earlier, same way you fill out that application, use the EIN as if the EIN is filling out the application. That's the new identity of the person. This is often required by lenders to prevent fraud and ensure. Look at that. So they want to even prevent fraud. They don't want anybody to just use your EIN either. They want to make sure that it's you, that is your EIN, it's your name, your house, and so on, because you're going to be signing for the house. This is often required by lenders to prevent fraud and ensure that the loan is being used for legitimate purposes. All right. So by the time you get the loan, it'll be at the banking system, which I'll explain that you'll be able to get that in our next calls. We'll talk about how you're going into the bank once you get all your documentations that you'll be doing to buy the house. Now, if you guys have any comments or questions, I'm going to come back and I'm going to read more of our screen. Just give me just a moment. I got to pull up a few more things. So I'm going to give you all just a quick, which we say a commercial break, and I'll be right back.
Oh, shit, hold on, no. All right, I'm sorry.
All right, so we're right back. Let me make sure I turn that audio. Apologies for the delay. So we're right back. I'm gonna go and get into our next segment. I'm gonna go through our announcements first, because I forgot our announcements right before I left. Any comments or questions so far based upon the real estate answer to the credit so far? I think I went into the last thing that talked about the EIN, this same W-9, this same EIN document, or even filling out their application, this EIN number that you're using. Does anybody have thoughts of this, opposed to the traditional way that most of us have been taught? We've been taught about how we're going to use our social. They tell us to use our social security number in order to apply, right? They say even to apply for the loan. So is any thoughts to this concept that may be a little difficult to explain if you were to go in even to a bank? And we'll get into that more detail next week as well. All right, so I'll pull this diagram. All right, I see right here. Okay, so right here, so it says when buying the house, we're going to be using the loan. As we see the buying of the house, you see that somebody is able to use just the EIN, or the, which we say the trust document by itself. I gave you all my example right here. We're still talking about the same CP. Some people call it the CP 575. That is what it's called, the number of the notice. That's more of the technical IRS back office information. But for us, we're just saying you're utilizing this document, or the information that is on this document, when you're filling out those applications. So this is the most important thing that you'll be utilizing when you're able to say that you're going to buy the house. So somebody says, can I use the EIN? The short answer is yes. According to the search that we have, we've been able to search through the internet and give research into that. I've also been able to search through the IRS to see the utilization of the EIN being used to buy a house. So the IRS does allow us to write this off now, since we know that we're going to become the responsible parties. Is going back to the beginning of what I was talking about in the beginning, talking about the responsible parties. So now that you see the IRS see that you bought the house, now that you bought the house with the EIN, this brings you right into the employer ID numbers. So even the IRS tells you right here, you go right into the employer ID numbers, and this will get you straight into the business side of the Internal Revenue Service. And we want you to always use the trust EIN, because it instantly brings you over to the business side. The only thing that's different, you won't have employees and things of that sort, because you don't need employees. You have trustees, which we understand the trust only has trustees. You also have beneficiaries. So right here, you see they give you the examples of the employer identifications. Partnership is one of them. Limited liability company, the LLC, which is the most popular one that we see all out over the world, is the LLC. The corporation is another popular thing that as well. Tax exempt, which is the nonprofits, are very popular. The estate. So now we're getting right to what we're in is the estate. You got the estate. Next is the trust. These are the two things that we're going to be focused on because the estate and the trust, you are able to manage those things a lot easier because it's more easier for you to explain to yourself than if you had to get a lawyer or someone that knows more. You can just study this. So a trust, and it says itself, certain grantor on revocable trust. All right, grantor on revocable trust, certain. So we're going to go into why this is a layer of the trust. And we're going to say once you get out of this social security number, using the trust EIN will become a lot easier for you to identify yourself and to feel comfortable. So if you wanted to go into more depth and to see exactly how to utilize the EIN, there is a document right here. I can give you all this publication. But if you see this, this is actually where you go to the IRS. You can go on the same screens that I went on. And you should be able to click and scroll down to the same things that I'm showing you right here. So all I did is I clicked on trust and it took me to the PDF that talks about employer identification and understanding my EIN. So the IRS gives you all the information you need to understand your EIN and why it's very important to utilize this right here as a business. Okay, so the information by type of business entity tells you what type of business that you have, so you don't have to go into all the different corporate understanding of what a business entity is. We're not there yet. We're just using the more, we'll say, original understanding of the EIN first, because once we get too complicated with trying to explain what type of business we're doing, this will take us into a longer time of actually feeling as if we can start or even utilize our business. So the IRS says as soon as you have this EIN, you are able to use the EIN. They tell you when you do not need the EIN and when you do need the EIN. So they got the sole proprietorship definition right here. I always go into this, but we're not going to talk about that today. We know that the sole proprietorship is an unincorporated business. That means it's unincorporated. It is not part of the corporation. You will need an EIN if any of the following are true. So that goes back to why you get the EIN. Right here it says you file bankruptcy under Chapter 7. That's when you get the sole proprietor EIN. Next time you get, like I say, I'm just reading what the IRS says because I know some people, they still need to see where the sole proprietor. So I'll just read this one part for you all to show and prove where it tells you this is what you're doing. So the only time you need to get the sole proprietor EIN or a new sole proprietor EIN is if you file bankruptcy under Chapter 7, you liquidate, or Chapter 11 of the bankruptcy code. So then you get the sole proprietor EIN. Next is you incorporate. Look at this. The IRS says that once you get the sole prop EIN, you incorporate. So that means that you have become incorporated when earlier your social security card was already unincorporated. And I was explaining this in detail to make sure that you can see the IRS says this, not what we may think or what even we may even say. You are a sole proprietor and take in partners and operate as a partnership. So that means when you add a whole bunch of people with you, you instantly have to get an EIN. If it's just you by yourself, you don't need the EIN. Right. So when you add like 2 or 3 people with you, then you have to go ahead and incorporate. You got to go ahead and grab an EIN. And the last one is you are establishing a pension, profit sharing, or retirement plan. That means that you got to get the EIN because you're going to have your insurance transfer over to your sole proprietor. You're going to do this profit sharing brokerage account or something, right? So that is what the IRS says when you will need the EIN for the sole proprietor. So I'm making sure I'm going through what the document says. The publication 1635 This is where it says that you will get all your information, all your definitions from of learning what type of business that you're running. So that's the sole proprietor. Next one is corporation. I'm not going to read through corporation. I just wanted to show you this is what the IRS is saying a corporation is. This is where all the information shows every detail of what it is. Partnership definition right here. Look at that. Partnerships are husband and wife. So some of us may think, see, look, I'm just reading what the IRS says. The IRS says when you are a husband or a wife, you are in a whatever it is, it's a business. Let's keep it simple. IRS is saying this. This is not something that we should take lightly. If we see people, they may look at the co-partnership or something, or the what do you call it, domestic partnership. So we're just saying this. Hey, will you need an EIN? It says if you incorporate, if one partner takes over and operates as a sole proprietorship. So I'm just getting into some layers of what you see the partnership is. Next is estate. This is where it gets difficult because we always tell you not to go jump into the estate first, but some people have. And I don't know how you deal with it, but I wouldn't want to feel like I'm dealing with an estate, which is a legal entity created as the result of a person's death right here. So the person's death can mean many things, a physical death of the body, and they are no longer here. Or one can say they're physically no longer going to operate in some form of whatever, deceased. They call it deceased. But this is the way the estate works. The estate works with the deceased person, right? Or the decedent. They say are owned by the decedent. So your other way that you can see this, instead of being deceased, if you read through it, it says the estate pays any debts owed by the decedent and then distributes the balance. So the decedent can be your social. If you see it from that perspective, the social security card is considered the decedent. So that goes into the estate. And you also see a fiduciary. That means that you must become fiduciary over the estate. I know some people have a difficulty of this. I tell people that the executor is good, but the fiduciary controls all of the money. All right, so all the funds, all the capacity of the estate, according to the IRS, is done by the fiduciary. Next is the trust. Let me read through. I forgot for estate. We got 1041. So you see the estate files 706 or the estate files 1041. As you notice, some may not need to file the 1041 because they jump right into form 706, because that's not technically the one that we control. You see it right here, United States estate. So the 1041 is something that you may have control over because it says the U.S. fiduciary return is what's filed by the 1041. Next is the trust. That's the one that we want to deal with. There's all types of trusts that are out here, but we're going to focus on the inter vivos trust. I'm going to scroll down right here, and it says a trust may be created during an individual's lifetime, inter vivos, or at the time of his or her death under a will. That's a testamentary. So we don't want that one. We want to deal with the inter vivos trust. So that's the trust that we talk about there. And they tell you the one that's revocable / irrevocable right here, living trust, and so on. All right, so that's it for the EINs. I just wanted to show you the types of EINs that you will get. And if you want to read through this book at your time, there is more extensive details of what to do, where to apply, and so on, if you wanted to get all the details right here with the EIN. All right, so any comments or questions so far on that segment as we went into the trust? We talked about how this employer identification number was connected to the responsible party. So once you have this EIN, as we going into back to the original part that we started, you have this document that I showed you all on the screen earlier. Once you have this document in your hand, This allows you to become the responsible party according to the IRS. And then this IRS allows you to see yourself as a business. Once you see this business, you're operating a business, and that takes us down through each of these layers. They got business taxes, business structures, operating a business, and so on. So operating a business, to scroll onto this. This right here goes into record keeping. So if you have an EIN, you'll be able to keep the records of the EIN. You're going to be, unless you're a professional bookkeeper, you probably don't like to spend valuable business time keeping records, but keeping good records can actually help you save money. So that's what the IRS says. So what we do is we tell you how to be more intense with your funds. We have a banking course that helps you understand how to put all those funds into a business. All right, so that is it for what I see so far into this for today with the operating the business and utilizing the EIN as a responsible party. Let's get right back into the real estate. So let's go right back into how, and I'll close us out for tonight based on how you can purchase a home through the real estate as this responsible party, as we talked about earlier, buying a house with the EIN number. Now, I asked this question before, and I was able to get some answers to this right here about the real estate credit. So I asked this question about real estate credit, and I got some good answers back. And I'm just going to read through this a little bit, and I hope you all can get some more details, and then we're going to go to our comments and questions and let you all close me out. So it says, can I use my EIN to apply for real estate credit? So as it just shows you, the IRS recognizes your trust as a EIN. So you don't have to register anything. You don't have to go to the state. You don't have to go to the government again. Once you have that EIN, to my knowledge, I think you should just be able to just use it, right? There's no extra additives for the trust. Now, if it's an LLC, you have to do certain things. You have to register with the state. You have to do these things. If it's an S corp, you have to do something as well. You have to do it for a C corp and all these other entities. But for the trust, for some reason, you don't have to go do anything with the state. You don't have to register or show anything. All right. So let's get into the answer of what the EIN is utilized for once you have the EIN in your hand. Yes, you can use your employer identification number, EIN, to apply for real estate credit. But there are a few important steps and considerations to keep in mind. How EIN helps in real estate credit. Using your EIN allows you to apply for credit as a business entity rather than as an individual. That's the first line. That's what the first line that it gave us back. It says that you're going to be able to apply as a business entity now and not the individual. This is especially useful if you're purchasing property through an LLC, corporation, or partnership. Look at this. So this shows you the normal route is the LLC, the corporation, or partnership. I just read for you that you'll be able to add now to the list the trust EIN. So I went through this on a regular route to show you the same way that you would see an LLC apply for credit, the same way you see a huge corporation applies for credit, and a big partnership applying for credit, right? You want to use the trust EIN to think of applying for that big, huge credit for real estate credit too. However much that credit line you want, right? So let's think about this the way that the EIN has to be utilized in that perspective, because this is new. What you'll need to successfully apply for real estate credit using your EIN, you should first establish a legal business entity. That's right. So that legal business entity we went over is that CP 575. Here we go. So you have nothing else you needed. That is your business. The CP 575, that trust EIN document that you got from the IRS. Okay. Next is open a business bank account. That goes back into next week. I said I won't be able to get through that this week because there's so much layers that we had to get to before we can get to even the bank. Because some of us jumped right to the bank and you're asking the bank for money. You're not asking the bank for money. You're going to give the bank money. I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to give the bank the funding that is needed in order for the bank to help you get the real estate. Next is build business credit by using business credit cards, trade lines, and paying vendors on time. That's right. So that means you still pay the same bills that you're paying, but you all need to put the bills in the trust EIN, right? This is going back to the vendors because the IRS sees them as vendors now. They don't see them as just your bills. They don't see them as just your light bill or your phone bill. They see them as vendors now for you, for your trust business. Like I said, I'll show you all that if you're on the IRS website, they're saying that you are operating a business. Get a DUNS number. That's right. So next, you got to attach that DUNS number to the EIN that we just spoke of, because you did the same thing for the LLC. You did it for the S Corp. But why won't you do it for the trust? Right. So the trust needs to have a DUNS number. That's right. So the trust also can have a DUNS number. This will strengthen your business credit profile. That's right. So now you can use the trust as business credit. The trust can now buy the apartment complex. The trust can buy the house or build the house. So we're going to say sometimes you all should probably buy something that's going to build something brand new. Keep business details consistent. That's right. So don't be switching the information up. Right. It says keep your business details consistent. That means you put the same information that's on the EIN, as you see right here, across all applications, the name, the address, the phone, the EIN, etc. So don't switch up the phone number all the time. Don't keep switching up the address and so on, because once the system sees everything matches that business entity, this will build this real estate line of credit that we're reading right here. These are the things that you'll need. This is before you could even get started with the real estate credit. All right, so this is where it gets to the detail of how you're going to be able to buy the house, how you're going to be able to get the line of credit. Because you don't need the cash, you don't need the money. You just need the documents. Here we go. So types of real estates you can finance with your trust. So remember, we just transformed the LLC into a trust. We don't worry about the LLC no more. We thinking about the trust managing real estate now directly. I don't have to make the trust the owner of the LLC and keep the LLC running the real estate. All I gotta do is just use the trust now. I don't have to use the LLC to run the real estate, which we went over earlier, how you're gonna title all the property into the name of the revocable trust earlier. So you can't use the LLC forever. Eventually the LLC gonna have to give up ownership of even the stuff that it has, which we'll talk about on another call. The types of real estate you can finance. That's right, finance. It didn't say that you were going to come up with some cash and pay them in cash. Don't pay these people in cash. Business credit can be used to finance single family homes, multifamily properties, fix and flips, vacation rentals, commercial real estate. This is a big one because that's what I'm focusing on now. I'm in commercial real estate. Land purchase, and I'm into this as well. Land purchases. So look at this. Your trust EIN instantly can do all these things right here that we're seeing right here. See, the other route, if you use your social, you'll be limited. You know that you would. They will say, hey, you got to stay in the house for at least a year before you can even rent it out. Look at that. Why are there restrictions? Why are you telling me I can't just move out my house after I buy it and I want to rent it out so I can make some money to pay my mortgage? Nah, you can't do that. You got to stay in the house, bro. You got to stay in the house and you got to pay the bill. What? These things don't make sense, right? But it does. Now it does because they kept us on the individual side to keep us to think this individual way, right? by putting this on the business side, this takes you way off onto way more opportunities, as you can see, the business credit gives you. Totally different from the Social Security card credit. Financing options right here. So they're breaking it down, all your financing options in detail for you to use the trust. So when you use your trust EIN, you're able to finance the entire project 100% with your trust. How do you do this? Common credit vehicles included. Business credit card. So you use the trust to get the business credit card, which we explained how you can build that trust up with a secured credit card. And then eventually the secured credit card will open up the door for the unsecured credit for the trust also, which we talk about through our banking course that you all have to take Monday through Friday. If you're not taking that, or if you already took it, then we can give you a rewind and refresher of this course. So you need the business credit cards for the trust. Next, there are lines of credit. So you got to start building lines of credit with the trust as well. These are financing options. SBA loans. So once the SBA sees, hey, he has some business credit cards, he has some lines of credit, let's go ahead and give him this loan through the Small Business Association, right? So the Small Business Association can jump in and give you the trust EIN loan. So they tell you, oh, you can't use the trust. Yes, you can. You can use the trust EIN for the SBA loan. Hard money loans. All right, that's one of your best ones. As long as you can prove you have the business and it's operating, you got some good management over real estate, you may know somebody who got some cash already, who got some money. And then they can transfer the cash to your bank account and they pay for the real estate bill for you. That's called hard money loan. That means they got the money sitting in the bank account today and you got the agreement from the owner and the owner is ready to close on the deal, right? Now, that hard money loan person can go ahead and transfer the cash over and pay for the property right then and there. That's right. So that's where it goes into. Next is your traditional commercial real estate loans. Traditional commercial real estate loans. That's where you get into the relocks. All right, so we're going to get into why all these layers right here are the common credit vehicles. You won't use any other thing outside of this. If you use your personal credit, you have not financed the property correctly. Keep in mind, you want to put all the credit in the name of the trust. And it works different with foreclosure processes with businesses than they do with personal. Okay. So you're going to almost learn they probably don't even foreclose on the actual property anyway. They're probably going to go after the trust. Makes more sense, right? Until the trust pays it off. Because it's business. It's not property. You see, when I say this, it's not a house, it's real estate. So that goes to the answer. I'm going to answer this question we see right here. And we'll be closing out in about maybe 10, 15 minutes. But it says, if the trust property payments get behind, can the trust property get foreclosed on? That's a good question. I may ask that question into the system, but if in the provisions of the contract or agreement you sign, the short answer is yes, but the trust technically could always pay off the property because it's in trust. So it's kind of a hard thing because it's not like it's a foreclosure process. It's just a, hey, you're behind in your payment. You owe us the money. Can you pay us now? That's like with anything. But we're going to show how you're not going to be in this situation with the individual, which I'll go into our announcements to prove why when you buy these properties, they're going to be cash flow properties. You're going to learn how to attract more wealth to the location as well. Now, here goes some considerations. And this is always going to happen because lenders are always going to ask you these questions. That's why at the end, I have to go to the disclaimer to say, hey, Brother Wallace, at the end of the day, I said all this to the lender. They told me, yes, I understand what you're saying, but we still need to know your social security number. Okay, so I'm going to show you how they're able to still ask you those questions, but you all have to be prepared for them when they ask you this question. I don't know what to tell you. It's self to just do the same thing that happened with the real estate lady, the real estate broker lady, the real estate agent lady. They may ask you at the end, hey, what's your social? What's your social security number? So we can go ahead and see if we can run that social along with your trust. All right. These are going to be some hard questions that you may have to answer even at the end, because even right here, we're seeing that the AI gave us some answers of saying that not all lenders are going to be just so easily receptible to just you using just the trust EIN. Okay, so they may challenge and still pick your brain to see if they can get a way to get you to give yourself over right again, as we always talk about, to that social security card, because that social security card is that trust that they have power over. You know, they have power over that. You don't control that. And I hate to say it, it's your name too. Your name that they gave us when we was babes, we don't even have control over that name either. All right. So the more we come out of the name that was on that card, the easier it is to even buy the real estate. Because all I have to do is tell that person is, hey, I can't put any of that property in my name. This isn't my property. I'm just a responsible party, but I can't have none of this property in my name. That's how I would answer that question, even if they ask me for that social security number anyway. Just for those who are still here and they still may feel, hey man, they still asking me for that social. What do I do? So we got to be strong. We got to be able to explain ourselves to them at the time that they may ask us some of these questions. So yes, the short answer is let's go right into the key considerations that you may still be asked that question. Lenders may still require a personal guarantee. That's right. If your business credit isn't strong enough, that's right. So your business credit has to be built in order for them, because when you grab the EIN, there's no big old line of credit sitting on the EIN because you just grabbed it like yesterday or 2 weeks ago. So the EIN has a good credit score, but it doesn't have no credit line. And the credit score, they say of the EIN, the trust EINs, I think it starts around like 680. Just for those, don't quote me on it. It could be a little higher, it could be a little lower. I don't know. But I think the last time we looked into the EIN, the trust was just a 680 credit score. So it shouldn't be too hard for you all to get over 700 with just the trust. If you're trying to use your personal credit, it may be a little difficult because we may have difficulties. I know I do. It's hard for me to work on my personal credit score. I've been working on it for years and I still haven't worked on my personal credit score. So you'll need to show proof of business income or a solid business plan, especially for larger loans. That's right. So that is important as well, which I'll get into why you need to have that good old cash flow plan. Because if you don't have that cash flow plan, you don't really know what you're going to do when you buy the house. You're like, hey, how am I going to pay this house off? So we're going to go into why you still have to come up with a cash flow plan so that you can barter and trade the cash flow of whatever it is that you're going to do that's going to bring value to that property. It doesn't always have to be cash, but I'm just explaining that is what is going to be happening. Maybe you're painting the property, maybe you're keeping the grass cut, maybe you're cleaning, I don't know. So we'll get into that. The last one that they have right here says not all lenders offer EIN only credit options. So shop around for those that do. All right. So we're not saying everywhere you go. So don't say, hey, Brother Wallace said everywhere I go, they should take the EIN. That's not what I said. But there are places that may say they don't take the EIN only. They want your social, right? So you got to shop around. If that's all they want and you can't get them to not just only take the EIN or fill out that application with just the EIN document, then just go ahead and leave. Don't feel like it's a hard thing to tell them that you no longer want to proceed with doing this contract or this application. Thank you for your time and your consideration, but I'm going to go ahead and cancel my contract. That's all you have to do. Just leave. If they want the social that bad and and you feel that that's irking you in some form, then just leave. Don't feel like you gotta pry it, because the EIN should be something simple for you to just give them your ID. If they want to look for the ID, here's my ID, here's the EIN document. That's all I'm giving you. I don't have a social security card to give you. I'm not giving you a social security card. You don't have to say that, but I'm just saying that's how you have to think to yourself. So I hope this helps with some of us that are thinking about this in this format. This is one of your key considerations to know at the end that is still a possibility. They still could ask you for that card. All right. So that is something that we're not saying that you have escaped it completely until you are able to overcome giving over that information, which we know that they can ask you for that information at any time, whether they ask you for the last four. So that's another quick trick. They may say, well, what's the last four digits, right? What's the last four digits? Don't worry about the whole social. Just give me the last four digits. All right. I've been there. I failed. I'm just telling you, I failed so many times that I had to learn to stop failing because it's difficult. It's difficult. All right, so let's go through our announcements. I'm gonna close this out right here. It says today we will discuss multiple questions and answers to usage of an estate or trust EIN. We will learn how to operate and maneuver with just the EIN. If you already own the property or in the process of owning the property, we will discuss strategies how you should consider renting even your own house to yourself. That's a good one right there. So let's talk about how you need to move your house over, even if you are like paying it, you need to go ahead and rent it to yourself. So you need to be a renter. Make a lease agreement, even if you're the owner of the house. I know that sounds kind of like, hey, why am I doing this? I'm the owner. But we're gonna go and prove why the trust should be the one that is renting the house, not you. You don't want your social security card to rent that house. You don't want your social security card to actually own that house either. Once you get rid of all the personal usage of the house or apartment, you will have the ability to place all expenses and payments through the name of an estate or trust. There you go. So that is your main benefit to doing this, because you now can use the estate EINs or the estate EIN if you're on that level, or you can use the trust EIN and other EINs as well, other trust EINs. So the more you have the personal usage out, the more you can use the EINs. Next is also learn how to acquire real estate with just a line of credit to investors that you will generate income or cash flow through a property that you plan to use or purchase. Okay, so there you go. So that's why you go to the property owners. I'm sorry, not the property owners. That's why you go to the banking system that I was telling you earlier. If I have my example, let me see if I can pull it back up. Where you're going to go to the hard money loan. This is your best one right here, your hard money loan people that have the cash already. If you can prove to them that you can create cash flow by putting tenants in a location, or maybe it's an office, maybe it's a place that maybe somebody has a home-based business or something like that, you will be able to help get finance for that project even faster, because you're proving to them that you're going to be able to generate some type of cash flow or some type of income out of the property as soon as you get it. So that's why it's important to see that from the real estate perspective of a business, not just the personal side. Because the personal, you buy the house, you work, you pay your bills. That's different. That's the personal side. On the business side, you buy the property, you put a tenant in there, the tenant pays rent, or you have a business there, they fix cars or something, whatever that place is that you do, and that's how they make money. So that's the whole purpose of looking at it from that perspective of the location and creating income or cash flow once you buy. You will only be able to build a location from scratch or use already built property that will generate income and cash flow. So there's your two options. You can also use these hard money loans. And some people even go as far as the SBA, because the SBA can give you up to $1.5 million or more, which we always say a college student should be focusing on this SBA, because the SBA is right open to the college student even more, because you're right there with the Small Business Association right here, because they give you these business loans right here, because the business loans come from some federal contracting um, and everything, right? So let me see if I can go to how much some of these things are that they give you. And they give you specific things for certain people. Let's say if you're a woman-owned small business, then you get access instantly to funding because you're a woman. So a lot of women who have trust, the wife, if the wife is in the trust, she can apply for the credit for the trust because she is a trustee of the trust. So that's how the wife can also get access to funds or wealth for the trust. The husband can also do the same when he gets into the contracting. But I'm just giving you all this website to kind of show you how there are so many funding options that you can go into. You can make your payments to directly to the SBA loan for your payments to them and so on. They show you how to launch your business, how to grow your business, getting funding and things of that sort. They go through, let me quickly, I'll go through this right here. All your people for the funding. This is for people who are already established. Like I say, you have all those documents that we talked about on that other screen. You're able to get, could be a federal contractor. You can export products right here, women-owned businesses. Let's say you want to sell products overseas, you want to export things. They will pay you because they need a lot of US-based products to be sold overseas. Instead of us buying products overseas and selling it to people over here, they want us to manufacture our own products and sell it overseas, right? So it's a totally different new program they've been putting funding in for us. Women-owned businesses, that means if you're a woman, like I said earlier, you instantly get access to so much funding, just so much of starting off for your business. I think they start at about $50,000 just because you're a woman-owned business. Native American-owned businesses, that's right. If you're able to claim your nationality correctly and you know who you are and you believe you're Native American, then you also can also get access to more funding. Veteran-owned businesses, that's right. So you're a veteran, you get access to funds. Military spouse, that's right. Somebody in the military, your spouse, husband or wife, whatever, you create a business. Rural businesses, you're out there in the field. You know, God says, blessed in the city, blessed in the field. Rural. So the rural is another word for you out there in the country, right? For the rural businesses. Lastly is the minority-owned businesses. That means everybody that fits in the minority of you actually owning businesses. Meaning that if you know for sure that a lot of people in your category, your group don't own businesses, like a male-owned businesses, men or black men or whatever nationality you are, that can be a minority. So yes, these answers are all here for SBA to kind of show you the layers of where some of your fundings can come from. Once you get into the trust, using the trust, remember, you're not using their social even for this website. You also still, when you fill out their applications, like I say, I don't know where their application is at, but when you get to that part, even for the SBA, we're still explaining to you not to go straight into the usage of the social. So the SBA lines of credit and the business credit cards. We'll talk about that later as we close out. So like I say, the cash flow, these are gonna things that are gonna be used for your cash flow. And last but not least, because I know I went over my time, but I'll try to get into this next week if I can. We will go over all tax forms that must be filed upon acquiring property, as well as reporting all expenses so that you are able to get a line of credit. And that's going to go right into our banking system next week, because you need to have the tax forms completely filed in order to get this completely done as a responsible party. As I say, you are required by utilizing the EIN that I'll show you on my CP5, is you're required to file Form 1041. So that's where I'll get into the filing of the taxes next session. And we'll talk about why you must file the taxes on the real estate, why you must add all the total amounts on the real estate as well. Because if you don't put the total bills and all the things on the taxes, and you're not able to get the 1099, which I'll tell you is next, um, is to use those forms so that the line of credit can flow smoothly to you. So next is number one is the W-9. So the W-9 has to be complete on both sides. So you'll have the W-9 from either the party you're getting the money from or the party you're giving your W-9 to, right? So that is going to give you the point of contact. As they say, the POCs, your point of contact is your W-9. So that's a good one for those who put that in earlier. Now we're at the nitty gritty for the finances. Once you get at the finances, the W-9 must always be the first thing that you think about. Number two is your sales agreement / lease agreement. You're going to need that sales agreement / lease agreement, as I talked about. That was giving us some examples of that lease agreement that you'll need, or a sales agreement for buying the property. Number three is your 1099 OID and 1099B. That's going to go right into the IRS again, the 1099 OID. And that is a new form that some of us are not familiar with, but that goes into your original issue discount for that contract that you will create for whatever loan originates from that loan or for that contract. That's why they say it's an OID. And a lot of brokers use this, but remember, you're now using it for the trust. So you're not using your social here. At this point, you should be putting the name of the trust because the trust is the payer on that bill. So the 1099 OID goes on for the loan, and you'll also be doing a 1099B. So let's go to that one. You got your 1099B. So you get the 1099 OID, and then you get your 1099B. You fill out both. That will be here. And once again, you'll be putting the name of the trust that will be purchasing the property right here. So it says description of property. Obviously, you'll know what that property is when you're purchasing it, but you'll be putting the payer's name here. That will be the name of your trust. That is the 1099B. After you do those things, number four, that'll get you to something called RELOC, the real estate line of credit, RELOC. That's where I was telling you that you'll get into the bank, which I won't go into this week. But the banking system will give you something called real estate line of credit. But I'm just going to type RELOC for you all so you can remember that term. Write it down in your notes. RELOC. RELOC is a very known thing that people do. And RELOC just simply means real estate line of credit. So let me type that in because some people may not know the acronym, but just type in real estate line of credit. So that'll be what you're looking for any bank that you're dealing with. Do not do the one that is not in your name of your trust. Do not do it in your social, because if they trick you and say, hey, use your social for RELOC, then they put you right back into the side that you don't want to be in. And number five, that's the last thing for the day, is the cash flow plan for your property. So you need that cash flow plan for the property. Like I said, maybe a business plan that shows that you're going to generate maybe visitors, maybe you're a hair salon, whatever you're doing, home-based business, you got to have some type of cash flow plan, which I'll give you some examples next week of how you'll be able to convince the bank anyway that you're going to be able to make money out of that location or out of that deal. But that closes me out. So I give you all time for comments, questions, and shares, and we'll let you all have access to the mic for now. Thank you for your time and your efforts and learning this information about real estate. And I thank you for allowing me to explain it from at least my perspective the best way that I can. So I know I'll open up for comments, questions, and shares. And if not, then we'll be closing us out for this week.
Wallace, appreciate you tonight. My question, as far as next week, you said next week. Can you say what you're going over the next 2 weeks, please?
Yes, thank you for that. And I'll answer some of the questions in the comments. I forgot about our comments and questions on the YouTube as well as the inside the chat too. But yes, I'll be going over next week about how to approach the banking system Like, for instance, what documents and all the things for the finances and things, because that's really the last step, because you got the bill for the house and now you need to pay for it, right? So that's where this line of credit comes in. That's what I'll be trying to get into next week to explain how to use that line of credit. So I hope I answered that question.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Anybody else have any comments? The floor is open for now, and I'll go through some of our chat. Some of the chat will answer some of those questions. Someone said, what if you purchased a home before your trust was set up on the records? Do you deed transfers the deed into the trust once the trust has been properly established? So yes, if you already purchased the home, you have to move the title of the home out of your name or whatever name that it's in into the name of your trust. If you already purchased the home. If it's in a mortgage, you have to title the mortgage in the name of the trust as well. That's the answer to that question for someone who asked the question about the mortgage. So somebody said you have to have the money up front to pay for property like you would do anything else to fund the trust, or have your business trust name on the lease agreement. Okay. Sometimes all they want is a down payment. So when you say money up front, sometimes if you have a upfront agreement with a owner, as long as you have a down payment and you have put in a contract or an agreement, then the rest of the money goes usually to the bank. That's what they usually call it. The down payment is like earnest capital that seals the deal, and the rest of the money, the bank pays the other party, and the other party pays off their own bank. So next person says, what if you are in a home with an HOA? Yeah, so if you're in a homeowners association, then you have to take the homeowners association to which we call a quiet title action, where it's going to remove you as the one that has a social into the name of the trust. Or you have to write the homeowners association saying, hey, you are looking to remove yourself out of this homeowners association as a personal person. You're going to be transferring this property over to your legacy, and you want to put the revocable living trust in that instead of you. So the homeowners association is a new phenomenon that they're saying that a lot of people are having problems with because they don't know how to get out of the restrictions and rules of HOAs or notorious homeowners associations. Because to what we're finding out, the homeowners association can foreclose on your property. They can also remove you from your property. There's all types of things homeowners associations have the power to do. So our goal is to get you out of that as well by utilizing the trust so that you remove yourself from the name listed on the homeowners association property appraiser's website. So hope I answered all those questions on YouTube, and that closes us out from YouTube's space. If there are any questions on our chat right here, I'll answer this last question that we see right here. Have you already talked about leasing a car with the trust? Do you have a video archives that speaks on this topic? No, not this week. We're not speaking of the car. We're focusing on real estate this week. The real estate is the first thing that we want to see, because we believe once you understand how to purchase real estate with the trust, then the car should be just as the same methods that we see the way we purchase real estate. So that is important that we see that the EIN, like I said earlier, I gave you all the illustration of the diagram of how the EIN looks. It's the same document that the IRS gives you, but you have to use that EIN. You have to operate through the EIN. You have to identify yourself with that EIN as well. Okay, so our last question we have, it says, if someone applied for EIN for the LLC and they asked them for the SSN, so want the SSN be connected to the EIN? That is correct. That's why we don't like to say use LLCs, because the Social Security and the LLC keeps you on the corporation side, because it's two corporations technically. So you're using an unincorporated with a corporated, right? The corporated is the LLC. The unincorporated is the social. So that is the reason why we tell people not to use the LLC. You want to use the trust EIN. But yes, if you apply for the LLC, then that social security number is attached to the LLC. That is correct. So I hope that answers everything. And we are at 8:14 for tonight. Thank you all for your time, for your peace, for your prosperity.